Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to Cosmoteer and to the dapper one, the Scarab, and its fresh new design. Though I haven't given it a fresh lick of paint in between episodes because I was streaming yesterday and I frankly didn't have the time. Though we will hopefully see an upgraded or updated paint design for the next episode. Though that will also give me an opportunity to implement some of the really good suggestions that I've been receiving in the comments. Now, I'm just going to touch on a few of them, but there are a lot, and I'll go into them in more detail in the next episode when we actually implement them, because today's going to be for the fire ant. But I did want to call out a couple of things. First and foremost, M19 Pickles, who's got an amazing name, suggested charging up a beam prism. This is something that we noticed in the Cosmoteer stream. If you have a prism pointing into another prism that's pointing back into it, the light gets trapped between. But it's not like it just sits there at that level. It continually charges up. And then when you decide to release it by having one of the beams aim at something else, that's a very interesting time indeed. Now, the problem with the ion beams is they rotate slowly. So it might take some finagling to make that work. Maybe you'd want the capture prisms kind of angled like this, so that when you tell it the rearmost prism to aim forward, it's got very little that it needs to rotate in order to do that. But this is going to be a bit of an interesting experiment, just kind of building things up. My initial idea was to have effectively like an ion beam garrote, and you just kind of ram enemy ships with this incredibly powerful ion beam that's being trapped between two prisms and just, melt the ship apart between two like mandibles, which would very much fit the insect theme. But the idea of rotating the crystal and just releasing all of that charged power, that is an interesting one. That is a very interesting one, and we will have a look at what we can do with that. Oljo, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, commented that a single 3x3 reactor can sustain 4 ion emitters with a little bit to spare, so we will probably be looking into something along those lines. Now, I also received comments regarding the amount of doors, basically the throughput into and out of the reactor. We did see that the reactor was getting low. Like, at some points, only 2 of these batteries had any actual batteries in them, these battery charge ports. That was the lowest I've ever seen this massive reactor get. So I don't think it's entirely throughput. I think the reactor may be struggling a little bit, and if we increase the throughput, we're actually going to see it reach its limits. Nevertheless, that is a very good bit of information to have, and we may be changing around the actual charging of the ion beams going forward. Redstone Builder suggested swapping some of the shields, namely the super shields and the medium shields. I don't know, but we can definitely try it. Though if I swap the super shield, I'm going to have to raise it forward a little bit and probably pull this armor back to get the kind of coverage that they were suggesting. Right now, it does look like this crystal is impacting the shields. So probably going to pull that ion beam back. In fact, that's one change I will make right now because it's something I can do right now. So let's go ahead and quickly do that. If we pull this back, we should see, because right now, if you notice where the shield domes go, they give you the impression of what the shield would be at maximum output. That ion prism is impacting this quite significantly, as is this. So I don't think we're going to really be moving these around because it's just going to make it's not really going to improve matters. We're not going to get this full coverage of the domes on the outside, but I will give it a shot and just see what happens, because you never know sometimes. But let's pull that all the way back, and along that line, I will go ahead and just add in a little bit more. Oops, wrong button there. There we go, a little bit more down there, and we'll see how this does. There we go. There we are. The super shields have now come all the way over here. So they do get impacted by the crystal, but not by the structure. Very useful information that the structure doesn't have any impact on that. Now, the big one that I wanted to cover, and the reason why we're focusing on the Scarab instead of the fire ant in this very early part of the recording, we're going to address something full frontal right at the beginning of the episode, because I have addressed it so many times in the middle of the episode that I think that some people are missing it and they're kind of tripping over themselves to be helpful and share information that they think I don't have. John Stone and so many people have asked me to forego a single super awesome looking merged ion beam and consider splitting the beams into multiple beams for the sake of maintaining higher output efficiency on the ion emitters. I have pointed out in the episodes that I do understand the math behind it. Every additional beam going into a merger loses 25% power. The second beam will be at 75% power. The third beam is something like 56% power because it's 25% of 75%, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. The more ion beams you merge, the more ion beams you're wasting. This loadout with about 8 ion beam emitters is outputting around about, very, very muddy math, about 5 ion beam emitters worth of energy output. So we're losing a full 3 ion beam emitters to have them in a single beam. Now, there are some reasons why you might want to do this tactically. That is, this one ion beam can fit down a very narrow firing barrel, so it makes it more defensible. But I don't think that's really something that we need to worry about here. We could, for example, have more and a wider barrel, and that would all work out. I have plans for this, though, that we will be coming back to in a future episode. But just understand that I am aware of it, and for the most part, I am operating by the rule of cool. I think it looks really cool to have ion beams all connected in a web and firing a single, wider, bigger laser beam. That being said, I did have a couple of people in the last episode worried that I'd hooked up the crystals incorrectly, but just to go over this for you, this ion beam is effectively just a redirector. It doesn't have any merge. So this ion prism here has got 2 beams merged into it. This ion prism has 2 beams merged into it. This one has 2 beams merged into it. Each of these beams is roughly 1.75 ion emitters worth of power. And then these 2 beams merge down here for the final beam. And then this one doesn't lose any efficiency because it's only getting 1 beam fed into it. So that should hopefully reassure those of you who are worried that I don't understand the way it works, that I do, and I am making a conscious decision to put the rule of cool above efficiency. If this was a Dark Aavak playthrough, it would be efficiency before ethics, but because this is a regular Aavak playthrough, it is form before function. But do understand that I have a plan here. It has been pointed out that I could still have the ions merging to a certain degree and just have more exit points. That would introduce a little bit more defensive vulnerability because I'd have to have more firing positions, but I am willing to acquiesce on that. But only because I've got a plan for the central firing barrel that doesn't involve an ion beam going down it. I will get to what that plan is, though I suspect a couple of you can already guess what it's going to be. But that will be for a future episode. Don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain. Don't look over there. No. That's got nothing to do with anything. Shh. Now then, it's time to get down to redesigning the fire end. And we've got a fairly big redesign ahead of us. Now, first and foremost, as some of you may have noticed, I posted a poll on the community section of the channel asking for input on a fairly core design choice around which the rest of the vessel is going to be built. And that was simply, do we build the missiles on the ship or continue to resupply missiles in between engagements? And it was a really close one, honestly, but towards the end, it started to lean a little bit more heavily in favor of resupplying missiles between engagements. Currently, it sits at 55% in favor of resupplying and 45% in favor of manufacturing the missiles on board the ship. For now, we're just going to do what we've been doing up to now, and that is we will pop over to the Hercules or have the Hercules pop over to us using jump drives every now and then to fully rearm the Fire Ant from the Hercules munitions stockpile. However, in the future, we may go for more of a hybrid with perhaps a ship that is specifically designed to carry missiles and bullets and things like that. Like basically a fleet auxiliary following around the Fire Ant and the Scarab. And the Hercules can just be off doing its thing with the large manufactorum buried inside its belly. That option wasn't on the poll this time because I don't know where we're going to sit with crew, and I kind of want to have a finished ship by the end of this episode, not another like 1 or 2 episodes where we kind of got a fleet of half ships none of them staffed fully until I crack a couple more bases. So that's where we're at. We're going to be building the Fire Ant to have a stockpile of missiles that it will need to replenish every 2 or 3 engagements or so. But with all of that said and done, the first and very, very first thing we need to do is to decide how we're going to go about rebuilding it. And I think we're going to abandon the diagonal mode. I know. Before you get really upset, I just feel that we're going to be able to make a more distinct broadside of missiles if the missiles are not always kind of locked into a 45-degree angle. So the idea of the Fire Ant would be that the Fire Ant would fly alongside a much greater distance from an enemy and then just deploy missiles directly towards it, or have certain missiles launch from the rear from that direction. So maybe put the longest range missiles at the back and the shortest range missiles facing the opponent, just so that we have the best deployment of munitions against the target. So that's going to be the biggest change straight out the gate. We're going to be moving back to the regular grid, something like this. Next, we're going to need to redesign the thrusters. I'm going to try and approach this from a 4-component perspective. 1, thrusters at the back. 2, thrusters at the front. 3, the cockpit command and control section. And 4, the missile storage and missile launcher section. So give me just a moment to get everything laid out the way we want, and then we're going to continue. Okay then. Right, so we've got our axes set up correctly, we've got the grid set up correctly, and I've already started chopping up parts of the ship just so that we've got a clearer blueprint to work with. Now, we're going to start off with the rear thruster cluster. And my idea for this ship is that it's not really going to be as nimble in that it's going to try and reposition a lot. It's going to try and rotate a lot to keep its facing with the enemy. It's going to try and effectively joust, but at a great distance. It's going to fly parallel to the enemy craft, probably in the opposite direction, but along a parallel line, and deploy all of its munitions, just kind of curving around it as the craft passes, and then flying up alongside the other side. Generally speaking, it's going to be out of the way of the main battle going on between the Scarab and whatever enemy it is. So it's going to need reasonably strong forward propulsion, but not as significant lateral or turning thrusters. Still, I do want it to be able to maneuver around a decent bit. So we're going to start off, as ever, with an engine core. Now, for the frontal propulsion, I think going with tried and tested, just big boy thrusters for the central thruster cluster, and perhaps some degree of repositioning along the sides there. That will give us a nice cluster here. However, I think with this design, we're going to go with more of an asymmetric setup, in that we're going to have a reactor for each engine core. Now, these engines pull quite a lot of power. If we have a look right now, power use 0.2 per second, so we're already up to 0.4, and then these use 0.4, so that's 1.2. So in total, every second, this is going to be 1.6 power if all thrusters are burning at the same time. Now, whilst forward thrust, I imagine, is going to be the case, the lateral thrust, the turning thrusters, probably not. So we're going to have a little bit of give now and then. So I don't need a bigger reactor than this, because this can output 1.5, which is enough to cover the main forward thrust and have a bit left over to help with lateral thrust and recharging them from time to time. Next up, I think it would be very wise for us to have dedicated bunks. So we're going to have the operators, the 2 people who are going to be working inside the engine room, and we're going to have 2 carriers. I think that's all they're going to need. And since we're making this so nice and self-contained, let's go ahead and just pop down the way in a fire extinguisher, and that's it. We can now coat this in armor to a certain degree. Don't want to use too much, and the idea of the Fire Ant is that it's not going to need too much, because it's going to be fairly far away from any conflict. But I like the idea of having, just a little bit of detailing from the armor. So give me just a second. Okay, there we go. I think that will be a pretty solid thruster cluster for the rear, but I'm not done yet because whilst this is going to be great for just right behind the center of mass of the ship, I think it was Esperologist several episodes ago now opined that the game probably does simulate the effect of thrust, at least to the degree that having the majority, the bulk of our forward thrust directly behind the bulk of the mass of the ship would probably give us the best thrust ratio, energy to thrust ratio. So we're going to try that. We're going to have some nice big chunky thrusters right here at the back. However, I do want a little bit more speed, and I do want a little bit more rotation. Largely so that we can dodge asteroids and wrecks. Bloody wrecks. So we're not done with the rear thruster cluster yet, but this is going to be probably the width of the ship or something around this wide, probably a little bit larger to accommodate the missile launchers as well, because they're no longer going to be angled, which is one big advantage of a diagonal ship, is that you can kind of fit more into the space because of the angle, but in terms of being able to aim it the way that we're going to design the ship to make use of, it does benefit from being able to align to the grid directly. But give me just a moment, because I've got a bit of an idea. Might be a cheeky one, but we'll see. There we go. Am I sure this is going to work or even be useful? Not even remotely. But I kind of like the idea of it. So we've got 3 completely isolated engine clusters, thruster clusters. We've got the little bit of extra oomph to the forward, but a lot more oomph to lateral and turning. Now, again, these are completely isolated. We've got an entry point over here. We've got a fire extinguisher. We've got a little bit of point defense on all of them, facing in different directions. What I don't have is point defense over on this side, and there is a part of me that's wondering if maybe I shouldn't sacrifice this in order to add that in. And we'll see how it goes. If we find that point defense is necessary on this area, or maybe even a shield, because we could just throw a shield in there for more or less the same effect, in fact. No, it's too complicated as it is. We're going to hold off. We will make design revisions in an iterative process. Right now, I just want to see if this works. I like the idea of having this. The fire ant. This is probably bigger in mass than the entire fire ant, the engine section alone, but it is going to give us, hopefully, an awful lot of oomph in the right direction. Now, this is going to cost us a lot. We are already over the point where a single bridge, cockpit, would be able to help us out. So I'm just going to pop this one in there, even though we're not going to be using it just yet. That is there to tell me how much room I've got to play with. I am starting to think we might end up having to go with the bridge, but we'll see how it goes. Right. That's the rear thruster cluster for the fire ant complete. Now, time for the fore thruster cluster. And there we go. We've now got the nose cone, if you will. A reasonably powerful reverse thruster there. We're not building this ship to be able to reverse as well as it can accelerate. The whole point of it is to keep moving forward, more or less. But this is mostly for repositioning, and for that reason, we've also got some extensive repositioning thrusters on the sides there. I don't quite like how little armor there is here, so let's just change that up just a little bit, because looking at it now, I feel that maybe that's underrepresented. I want a little bit more of a profile there. Now, this isn't a bad candidate for having some extra shielding. The only problem is it's relatively expensive to do. But again, the hope here is that we're not going to be the target. That is always famous last words, but once we've actually seen this in operation, we can start deciding where it needs to have shielding, because this is not a symmetrical design. It is more or less built to attack with the enemy on a very specific side always. So I want to see where this ship draws weapons fire, and then add some more armor there, add some shielding there, maybe take some armor away from other places in order to save on weight, so on and so forth. But we've got the 2 main sections now for the engines, and so far I am building in just about as much crew capacity to these sections as I think they're going to need. This way, once we come to the end of the design, I'll see what realistically the full crew complement required to keep this ship running is going to be just at a glance. Now, the next, and arguably the most important section, is the main reactor and the bridge section. So let's get that one built in, and that's going to live right around here. Command and control is in place, and once again, like every other section on the ship, we're really experimenting with the whole idea of having these sections isolated. I threw these in there thinking, oh, you know, I'll save on a little bit of weight, but honestly, at this point, I'm not even sure that's necessary. I think we just need to accept that this is going to be a little bit heavier than we were expecting. But in total, this has now brought up the necessary crew complement to 34. Though there is a little bit of wiggle room on the energy supplies in this section. But the idea as a whole is this, as command and control, is going to have big boy shields. We've got the necessary crew to staff with one spare, both of these rooms, since this only requires 3. And then we've got this and this will represent the operators. Then these two are dedicated suppliers for the bridge and the sensor. The sensor, because at maximum range, our longest range missile is on par, if not a little bit better, than the ion beam. So we do need a sensor on this ship. And these will make sure that these two get direct priority to energy supplies. Let me just make sure the doors are in the right place. Then the 6 energy supplies here will man the 2 super shields and all 8 of the point defense cannons. Now, the reason why I've gone with potentially 6 supplies here instead of 4, and I might swing back to 4 if I'm perfectly honest, because the thing with these things is, although at full operation they might be consuming a lot of power, generally speaking, we're probably only going to be using one side at a time. I don't expect to be being attacked from the same direction at the same time. So I think that it will work a little bit better overall. Let's turn off mirror mode there because I like the idea of the suppliers having direct access to the room that they're supplying. Right, there we go. So that's command and control, which leaves this space here to be filled with missile launches. We have got exactly 58 points worth to play with. Let's just have a quick look at how much a missile launcher requires. That requires 5, so we could potentially have 10 missile launches and room to spare. We're not going to be going with that because I'm also going to want some big shields, and I'm also going to want some point defense, and we're also going to want storage. There's quite a lot to pop in here, but give me just a few moments and we'll see what we can come up with. All right, here we go. Here is the missile launcher section, the middle of the ship. As you can see, I have used up every single command point that I could. Most of that was used by done by padding out point defense wherever possible, with the idea that generally these don't have a consistent drain, so it doesn't matter if I put them in there. If they get used, they'll get refilled eventually, but if they don't get used, they're not going to be a drain on the system, so it doesn't really hurt to have them in, though I do notice that there is at least one superfluous door there. Let me get rid of those. There we are. Right, so how have we set this up? Well, in effect, we've got 2 missile launches on this side, and I would actually like to make sure that these are set to do EMP. So this is the back of the ship. This is the front. Well, this is the side that should be pointed towards the enemy. This is the side that shouldn't. I do have a shielder on this side because I have often seen missiles fail to guide to hit their target. Now, this is quite a large target, and it will be presenting its widest, longest side to the enemy. So, realistically, if missiles are coming its way, they're probably going to hit where they wanted to. But if they shouldn't, and they veer around, I don't want them having an easy access to this side of the ship. So, we've got a big shield over there as well. I'm just going to pop in some extra doors so that energy can move quite freely from one side to t'other. Now, given that, and given that whilst, yes, loading up the missiles is a primary concern, I'm actually going to say that for this one example, I'm going to pop in the paths favouring to and from the shields. That might be a bad move, might not be. We'll see how it goes. But we've got central storage for missiles. We've got 2 EMP missiles and 4 high explosive missiles. These should be pointed towards the target because they've got much shorter range than the EMP missiles, which will easily be able to arc up and down. If I'm in range with these missiles, then these automatically are, and these will start firing earlier if I let them. We've got a lot of point defense, regular point defense, not flak, to keep the crew considerations down, which are already at 60. As much as I really, really didn't want to end up with loads of crew, it seems that that's exactly what I've done, and I do feel bad. Nevertheless, it's at this point now that we need to pull this ship together, and there is part of me that wants to connect it via having scaffolding, but it's probably best if I don't. If we do something like this, if we just bring them to the right spot at least, maybe we'll do something along those lines. Perhaps I could even have something like that. And I would like to just pad out the armor in here just a little bit. Something along those lines. And then maybe we could do something like this on the inside. And I think just having brick connections there and there would do nicely. And we could have a little bit then of scaffolding just to make it look interesting, just going down the middle. Just try and keep the 3 middle parts connected like that, as it gives a bit more of an interesting shape to it. I could do away with this if I really wanted to, and that would improve the overall efficiency of these side point defenses, but I'm going to say no on that one. I think that that's a good enough joint plate there. Let's do the same, though, over at the top section. Then we're more or less done, other than having to get the crew on board, which, again, is going to be a very big other concern. Let's have that one. Oh, actually, that one lines up perfectly. Let's go for it. Just because it lines up perfectly, there's a part of me that's like, so we're going to change it. That being said, this would work. Okay, yeah, I'm down for it. I guess we did change it, unironically, in the end. There we are. All right. The fire ant has grown rather long. The scarab is now... What's this? Well, I mean, the scarab in total mass might be a little bit bigger. We can actually find that out by the way we can look into that. But, oh my lord, there's a lot of things needed here. Shocking amounts of hypercoils. Quite a few... fissiles. This is going to be, it's going to take me a little while to get this all together, and it will require 60 crew to operate as intended. Let's bring down the Hercules, because the Hercules is a little bit far away right now. Also, let's pull over the Scarab, just so that I can see how much this would cost with both of these there. Okay, well, it looks like I've only got 22. Yeah, so we were within range of the Hercules before. My lord, that's going to be a lot of copper. An awful lot of copper. Granted, we could probably sell the shocking amount of diamonds and processors that we've got in order to make the funds up to start doing this. But we're still going to come a cropper of the hypercoils. The hypercoils are going to be the real problem here. Everything else, more or less, easy enough done. The enriched uranium, that will actually cost us a little bit as well. All right, so leave it to me. I'm going to go and do a bit of mining. And when we come back, it'll be time to make it so. Hope you're looking forward to it. Okay, as you can see, the Hercules has been very, very busy out in the asteroid fields. At this point, taking the Hercules to an asteroid field is less pick and mix and more strip mine. We just demolish asteroids. And there's something quite cathartic and also troubling about the fact that this ship just shows up to an asteroid field and then the asteroid field just isn't anymore. We have filled up on plates. Part of that was salvaging wrecks. We have also filled up on our storage of missile components, and indeed we've gotten quite a lot more in some cases simply from salvaging again, and we've got a healthy amount of sulfur to continue building munitions, but we are now lacking in the base other materials such as fissiles, iron, and copper. That's something that's going to be a constant drain on our resources because we make a lot of other expensive things out of that. And in fact, we've got no coils whatsoever. So we're going to have to buy some components. There's just no way around that. We need 40 components down here, but it is finally time to make it so. There we go. That was an enormously expensive build, and it is completely drained our steel plates. At this point, we were just going to have to spend a lot of money on the steel plates, no matter what we wanted to do, because the Hercules couldn't store enough. We're going to need to expand the Hercules again, it would seem. But the next thing we're going to do is see if we can hire a couple more crew. Oh, we've got to wait for the present crew to get to their various jobs. That might be a little bit of a problem, since we don't have that many of the roles set up. Okay, I think that's everything we're going to need. Now, I do need this ship to pretty much have its full crew complement. Sadly. Because it's 60, which is a bit of a pain. Alright, well, I need a few peeps over here. So, Hercules, I'm sorry to say, I'm going to need to get you to transfer some of your crew. I know, it sucks. But let's start off with, like, just move over 20 people, first and foremost. And then we'll top up as we can. All I need is for a bridge crew in here, basically. Looks like we've got the bridge crew online. There we go. Now you can hail the station and hopefully fill out the rest of your crew complement. We can hire 24. That brings us up to 60 there, which means the Hercules can now... Well, actually, no. We're shy on money. Okay, well, let's have the Hercules shed some of the diamonds that we've been slowly accruing in large quantity. Let's go ahead and sell off 10 diamonds for 20k. That should be ample. What on earth is happening there? I'm kind of okay with it right now, but I don't want this going any further, so I'm going to allow the Scarab and the Hercules to fight against this hauler. How dare you, sir, try to kidnap the station while I'm trading with it. Rude. All right, let's actually go back over to the Fire Ant, make sure the Fire Ant is fully topped up with its crew complement. Let's have a look in here. Yeah, we are at 60 of 60. That is amazing. So I was really worried we weren't going to be able to do that. Though the Hercules is probably suffering a little bit as a consequence. Still, it's not that far off. It's full complement of 68 beds. And considering that also builds in quite a significant amount of redundancy for the porters, I'm actually really happy with that. All right. I think it's time for us to get the Fire Ant out there and cause a bit of mischief. We've got a couple of targets. Time for the Maiden voyage. Well, I mean, it's not technically the Maiden voyage of the Fire Ant. It's the Maiden voyage of this version of the Fire Ant, which is now deserving of a new name. Let's get that sorted, shall we? Fire Ant, Damper 3, Mark 3. There we are. All right. Let's go and find a fight. Now, we've got enemies moving in rapidly over there. We might want to reposition for this. Let's reposition then. Let's watch the Fire Ant and how quickly it can maneuver. So... once it's turned around, not very good at just turning around, but very, very fast once it starts moving in its general direction. The Scarab does have the better turning circle so far. A railgun-equipped ship. Not a very large accelerator, though, so I'm not too terribly concerned about this one. Right, let's see this fight happen then. Right, Fire Ant. Going to want you to accelerate onwards. Let's have a watch of your missile systems. In fact, we might actually get you in to fight the incoming enemy. There we are. Right, the Scarab is already engaging. It will be able to break through this shield, and ultimately I want the Scarab to then target the railgun system. Then take out the cannon, the disruptor, the shield itself eventually, but mostly trying defang that enemy for us. Right, as for you, let's I would like these to be on attack systems only. The HE missiles, want them to fire as soon as they've got a firing solution. But I want the EMP missiles to only engage if I tell them to target a very specific subsystem. All right, there we go. That was corrected, by the way, that they do target subsystems. It's just their inaccuracy probably makes it very easy to assume they don't. But they do. They do very much target subsystems. I would like you to engage. Let's have the default range be something like this. That is your default. Let's pull this across. And can I also rotate you? Maybe I can. There we go. This is more or less how I would like it to default engage its enemies. Something like that. We will save this. Save attack defaults. I want it to run alongside its enemy rather than barrel straight down toward it. But I have given you a direct target, so your EMPs should engage the moment they're within range. Now let's have a watch of this then, shall we? They should be within range fairly soon. There they go. EMPs away. Now, unfortunately, they may actually head past... Oh, no, they are actually fast enough to get around the ship. There we go. Now, if we are fast enough, I'm happy for you to just maintain this position, but we were already seeing volleys of missiles away. The Scarab is now engaged. Huge trail of PDC taking out incoming missiles. The EMPs have hit the thruster cluster at the back. Incoming volley of HE missiles going straight down. Other thrusters taken up. This is what we always wanted to see with our missile boat. That was absolutely beautiful. Let's see. Have you got anything I need to worry about? I really do need to pay attention to it. What? Oh, I was like, that's not a very convincing ion beam setup. No, that's this is interesting. This ship is a broadside ship. Okay, I can respect it. Right, well, given that, then, well, it's almost certainly going to bring this side to bear against the Scarab. So what do we want to take out first? The disruptors are the primary targets once you get a chance. As for the Fire Ant, honestly, if we can just send some EMPs straight down the middle, or even HEs, I'm fine with that. The Scarab is going to have no issue taking out any kind of munitions. And EMPs are away. We're about to see the HE launch. And first salvo is in the air. I really want more rockets in general. Second salvo away. And third salvo away mostly. It doesn't look like we had a full reload there. But it looks like we've already taken out a good chunk of their weapon systems in here. Scarab, could you reprioritize their thrusters and then go for the ammo storage within, if you would be so kind. As for the Fire Ant, I'm fine with you continuing to attack the weapon systems here and here. If we could take out their thruster cluster, that would be great. Not that it's much of a cluster there, it's just a thruster. Either way, happy to see it going down. EMP is away. Now, it does take time to reload this ship. Now, this is the second fight that it's been in, and we can see the general consumption of ammo. EMP's probably got quite a few launches left, but we are starting to dig into the HE ammo. There we go. That side doesn't really do too much to EMP a missile setup, but you can see the HE missiles are actually, they're fairly accurate. I like it. This is another ship, though, that is fairly long and slow, so it's the perfect target for the Fire Ant. There we are. The ion beam rearmed and explosions perfectly. We are going now for the thrusters in the middle. Though at this point, I would say the Fire Ant could probably reprioritize to the thrusters at the very far side. The Fire Ant seems to be convincingly keeping pace. I'm not even using its boosters. It still has that option if I wanted to. It's just being dragged by the enemy, just keeping it perfect firing distance. The engine rooms, the secluded, dedicated engine rooms with their dedicated crew, this seems to be working as intended. I'm glad I took the time to actually check how much power does this pull at maximum. And other than this cluster, and possibly this one, yeah, these two, ever so slightly off. 0.1 off, but you're only ever really going to see the thrusters on one side firing. These are completely self-contained and will pretty much manage themselves more or less forever at this point. Once the Fire Ant has gotten through there, let's have the Fire Ant try and reprioritize these clusters of components there. The Scarab, I'm happy for you to just destroy whatever you want at this point. It's almost bullying this ship at this stage. There's nothing they can do. The Scarab, though, will eventually get pushed into the heart of the star. Probably not the best place to be, if I'm perfectly honest with you. So how about we take out those thrusters so you're not inclined to do that anymore. There we go. The missiles are getting caught on a couple of things here and there, but it should be fine. Now, that huge hit from the EMP probably knocked out a lot of important systems on this side. Actually, the bridge was already gone, so I guess not too much. Though we've knocked off so many functional components, I think this one cockpit is still capable of running the ship because there's so much less ship there to run at this stage. Let's get the fire ant selected so we can have a proper watch of its reload. We're almost out of one side of the EMP missiles, and this is why I wanted both sides of the reactor to load both missile tubes, because I didn't ever want the case that this one just couldn't fire, even though this one had ample extra stores. Okay, we've got a diagonally built missile ship over here to play with. A perfect test of the fire ant. For this one, I'm going to have the scarab to actually stay close, but not right on top of this. Also, we probably need to do a little bit of repair, but we don't have any metal nearby. I should have repaired over the wrecks of the last fleet, but that's fine. Right, fire ant then. Let's start approaching. I want you to engage wherever you can. That should be fine. Move in nice and close. I would like you to prioritize taking out the cockpit if you could. Let's launch those missiles and slow down time a little bit more. There we go. We've taken out one side of the thrusters and they are spinning out of control. Let's get some more ships in there, please and thank you. You're managing to keep distance from them very convincingly. At this point, though, you're going to just burrow through using your HE, which isn't exactly what we want to see, if I'm perfectly honest. A lot of nice design here with the armor. It's getting in the way of my shots, but isn't impeding this ship's ability to fight back, which is quite a good design, frankly. Right, I would like you then to swing on down and attack from this side, whilst the scarab moves in a bit closer. Let's get you actually close enough to engage now, and you can just burrow straight through the middle of the ship if you are able. Target the ammo stores first and foremost, all the way down until you get to there. Just one after the other after the other. We want to see big explosions from their munitions. And the fire ant has drawn close enough to get some missile fire, and now we're going to see the opposite side getting involved in the defenses. We've not got a lot of point defense very much at the rear. I'm noticing, oh no, nothing is out of power, which is good to see. But can their missile barrage overpower ours? Looks like it cannot. Not nearly well enough, at least. Fire ant, could you continue aiming to take this cockpit out? In fact, do you know what? We'll take you all the way around the back. And we'll just hover there. This is more or less what we always wanted the fire ant to do, even in its fighter form, was to get behind the enemy and just take them out. Though you're going to have a bit of a hard time getting close, so I'm going to allow you to use your booster rockets there. Okay, they've strongly decided that this fight is not for them, and they are trying to get it. No, I'm afraid you cannot run away. This is not a thing that you're allowed to do. They've got fairly convincing thruster clusters. They're using the burrowed technique for the internal thrusters there, but it's really not going to make enough of a difference at this point. Not with the two ships attacking them. They are continuing to fire missiles where they can at the fire ant, because the fire ant, if the fire ant is close enough to fire its HE missiles, then they're probably close enough to have them shot back at them, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it. But wow, okay, you're going to be super fast. Is that by design? Are you like a gecko? You can just lose the tail if things looking dire. I mean, it didn't work out for you too well, but an impressive test of the fire ant's capabilities nevertheless. Let's have a look at what the repair bill is going to be. It's not great. The hypercars are a little bit of an expensive one, but we do have lots of those over with the Hercules. Right, okay then. Let's grab things from the ground there and then start stripping everything down. Look at it. The fights are going to get a lot bigger in scope. There's going to be a lot more moving around, but look how fast the fire ant turns. because the turning thrusters are at the very tip and the very tip at either end, basically. That actually works fantastic. And we've already got the coils there. Marvelous. Okay, well, I think that was a good opportunity to see the Fire Ant in action against another ship equivalent to the Fire Ant. I'm fairly certain that the Fire Ant's more varied weapons loadout would have given it the advantage in that fight, but one thing I will say is the enemy's missile barrage was more convincing ultimately. I would very much like to expand the Fire Ant's midsection out more, possibly even to the point of having this doubled. And then we will have a much more impressive barrage of missiles to fire. But that is going to be it for this episode. I really hope you enjoyed. I had a load of fun redesigning the Fire Ant, and thank you very much to everyone who voted on how to design the Fire Ant. I'll probably do polls like that a little bit more often when we're looking at redesigning a ship or building a new ship, and we want to know like some sort of core design paradigm or the central weapon system to use on the ship, that sort of thing. But with that, and as always, I do hope you enjoyed, and if you did enjoy what you saw and you want to see more, do consider leaving a like or a comment down below, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care, everyone.